All right, so buckle up, everyone, because today we are diving deep into the wild world of government finance.
Yeah, things are getting pretty interesting over at the Treasury.
We are unpacking a brand new Bloomberg interview with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And, well, he's dropping some serious hints about what his team's been up to.
It's a fascinating read.
Yeah, especially this whole situation with the Doge team. Everyone's been buzzing about.
Yeah, what is going on with that?
Right. Bloomberg's reporters seem pretty concerned about this Doge team, like they have access to some really sensitive financial systems.
Oh yeah, even IRS data.
It does sound a little sketchy, to be honest.
Well, Bessent insists it's not some rogue operation.
Okay, so what's the real story?
He describes the Doge team as basically 2 Treasury employees.
Just 2?
Yeah, just 2 who are specifically tasked with finding ways to make the government more efficient.
Huh. So less Mission Impossible, more like internal consultants.
Exactly.
Okay, so instead of fancy suits and gadgets, we're talking spreadsheets and process maps.
Yeah, probably lots of those.
But even if they aren't cloak and dagger operatives, their work seems to be causing quite a stir.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially with Elon Musk chiming in on Twitter. Have you seen this?
Hey, I can't miss those.
He's calling for the Treasury to stop approving certain payments. Kind of sounds like he's targeting the Doge team specifically.
Hey, everyone's wondering what that's all about.
So is there any evidence that Musk and the Doge team are, like, on opposite sides here?
It's hard to say for sure.
Okay.
But Bessent claims he and Musk are aligned. You know, they both want to cut waste.
Mm-hmm.
But those public statements from Musk definitely add another layer of complexity.
For sure. I mean, it just makes you wonder, is this kind of public pressure helpful? Or does it just create, like, unnecessary market jitters?
Right.
And speaking of market jitters, the Bloomberg reporters seem worried that investors are getting spooked by all this talk of the Doge team. Like, could their efforts to streamline government actually disrupt the markets?
Well, Bessent tries to, downplay those concerns.
Okay.
He emphasizes that the Treasury is proceeding carefully and responsibly,
Yeah.
as there's no need to panic.
Okay.
He also highlights the importance of maintaining a strong dollar.
So basically, a dollar that holds its value well against other currencies.
Exactly. Gives us more buying power and stability on a global scale.
Makes sense.
He even kind of takes a jab at China, contrasting their approach to currency management.
Interesting. So he's trying to project this image of, like, stability, competence.
Yeah, steady hand on the wheel.
But at the same time, he's hinting at some potentially major changes. Like, he talks about making the Trump-era tax cuts permanent.
Yeah.
And tackling the affordability crisis for working Americans.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Right. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
When you dig into what he's saying, you see he's floating some pretty radical ideas.
Like what?
He mentions the possibility of eliminating taxes on tips.
Whoa.
And even suggests, potential reforms to Social Security.
Okay, both of those are pretty complex areas with huge potential consequences.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it sounds like he's trying to appeal to both sides of the aisle, right?
Right.
Cutting taxes for some while addressing concerns about social safety nets for other. But how can he realistically achieve both?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it leads us to the heart of what this Doge team seems to be all about.
Okay.
It sounds like Bessent's hinting at a fundamental shift in how we think about government spending.
Okay.
Like, not just trimming the fat, but potentially finding entirely new ways to deliver services more effectively.
So not just making government smaller.
Right, but making it work better.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit more, because this is where it gets really interesting for our listeners.
Yeah.
So he's not just talking about, like, cutting programs or laying off government workers.
No, he seems to be suggesting something much more, like, radical,
Okay.
He even uses this simple equation to illustrate his point.
What's that?
Government equals spending minus taxes.
Okay.
He argues that for decades, the focus has been on either increasing spending or cutting taxes, but rarely on, actually reducing spending itself.
Ah, so he's saying both political parties have basically been stuck in the same old patterns.
Yeah, kicking the can down the road.
Instead of addressing the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Okay, so where does the Doge team fit into all of this?
Well, he positions them as a potential solution.
Okay.
This group that can find creative ways to drastically reduce government spending.
Without sacrificing essential services, I imagine.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty tall order.
It is.
Cutting government spending is always, it's such a politically charged issue.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there will inevitably be pushback from groups who rely on those programs and services.
Of course, yeah.
So how does he plan to overcome that?
That's where things get really interesting. He expresses confidence in their ability to achieve these savings.
Okay.
But he doesn't really offer a lot of specifics.
So it's like he's dropping clues but not giving us the whole picture.
Yeah, it's almost like he's inviting us to, connect the dots and speculate on the Doge team's actual methods.
Right, like what are they really up to?
Exactly.
It's a bit like a puzzle, isn't it? We know there's a problem, we know they're trying to solve it,
Yeah.
but the exact solution remains a mystery.
And it's this air of mystery, right, that seems to be captivating everyone.
Oh yeah, the markets, the media.
Everyone's trying to, anticipate what the Doge team will do next.
And what impact their actions will have.
Exactly.
Speaking of market impacts, the Bloomberg reporters bring up this concern about potential inflationary risks,
Yeah.
specifically related to tariffs. The Senate kind of brushes those concerns aside, claiming that any price increases will be like minimal and temporary.
Right.
Do you buy that? I mean, do you think that's a realistic assessment?
It's really tough to say, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, tariffs can certainly lead to higher prices for consumers.
Yeah, of course.
But the overall impact on inflation is complex,
Right.
often unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but since optimism, it might be well-founded,
Okay.
but it's also possible he's underestimating the potential downsides.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, for sure.
So another piece of the puzzle for you, listener.
Right.
If you start seeing prices going up on certain goods,
Yeah,
you might be seeing the Doge team's work in action.
right, whether it's intended or not.
Yeah, exactly. But shifting gears a bit, I gotta say, this Basent guy, he's a bit of an enigma, isn't he?
Yeah, kind of hard to pin down.
He projects this image of calmness and control.
Yeah, he's got that whole, I got this vibe.
But underneath, you can sense this real ambition,
Yeah, like a real drive.
Even a hint of ruthlessness in his pursuit of these goals.
I see that.
What's interesting to me is how he manages to walk this tightrope between appealing to, these different factions.
Very strategic.
He throws out red meat to his base, talking about tax cuts and a strong dollar.
Right, got to keep him happy.
But he also hints at these, radical changes.
Yeah, almost like he's playing a much larger, long-term game.
Right. It's almost like he's a chess master,
Yeah, thinking several moves ahead.
While everyone else is just trying to keep up.
Struggling to understand the strategy.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
We're talking about the future of the U.S. economy.
Our standing on the global stage.
The well-being of, millions of Americans.
Absolutely.
This is why we deep dive, right?
That's right.
We unpack these complex issues.
Yeah, try to make sense of the forces shaping our world.
Exactly. So let's recap what we've learned so far.
Okay.
We have this mysterious Doge team, potentially on the verge of, revolutionizing government spending.
Right.
Elon Musk is publicly weighing in on Treasury decisions.
Yep, can't keep quiet.
And a Treasury secretary who seems to be playing a very, calculated, strategic game.
Yeah, carefully orchestrated.
So what does it all mean?
Well, for one thing, it suggests we're in for a wild ride.
Oh, yeah.
I think the coming months, maybe even years,
Yeah.
likely to be filled with political maneuvering,
Oh, for sure.
economic uncertainty, and more than a few unexpected twists and turnings.
So for our listener, this means staying informed, asking critical questions.
Right, don't just take everything at face value.
There's a lot happening beneath the surface.
Absolutely.
And it's important to consider, different perspectives and potential motivations.
Right, who's really pulling the string.
Exactly.
And speaking of things happening beneath the surface, there's one more intriguing detail from this interview we should discuss.
Oh, what's that?
Basent mentions these weekly meetings he has with Fed Chair Powell.
Yeah, he's been pretty critical of Powell in the past.
Oh yeah, so this relationship's definitely worth watching closely.
That's a great point. I mean, the Federal Reserve plays such a crucial role in managing the economy.
Absolutely. Setting interest rates.
Controlling inflation.
Keeping things stable.
If there's tension between Basent and Powell.
Yeah, that could have some significant consequences.
Absolutely. The Fed and the Treasury, they're supposed to work together, right?
In theory, yes.
But they also have, different mandates and priorities.
Very different perspectives.
So if Basent starts putting pressure on Powell to, lower interest rates.
Or to take a specific course of action.
Yeah, things could get very interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And let's not forget about the whole affordability crisis thing.
Right, that keeps coming up.
Basent keeps mentioning this, but we haven't really gotten into the specifics.
Yeah, what does he actually mean by that?
We've touched on some potential solutions like tax cuts, Social Security reform, but, the specifics remain pretty unclear.
Yeah, that's the core question, isn't it?
What does Basent actually mean by affordability crisis?
Is it just code for, cutting social programs?
Or does he have something, more nuanced in mind?
Yeah, it's hard to say.
This is where the rubber meets the road, listener.
This is where it gets real.
The policies they choose to implement.
Yeah.
This is going to have a direct impact on your life.
No doubt about it.
So will those policies truly address the root causes of the affordability crisis?
Or will they simply shift the burden from one group to another?
I mean, that's the question we all need to be asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like we're watching this high-stakes game of economic chess, Besant's making his moves, and we're all just trying to figure out what the consequences are going to be.
And, the global markets are definitely paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
Any sign of, instability or uncertainty can really send ripples throughout the entire financial system.
For sure. But here's a thought that's been nagging at me.
Okay.
This Doge team, this whole thing.
Yeah.
Are they really going to, revolutionize government, like Besant says? Or are they just a distraction? Like a shiny new object to keep us all occupied?
While other things are happening?
Exactly.
That's a great question.
It gets to the heart of, what we try to do here on the deep dive.
Right. We're not just summarizing information.
No.
We're encouraging you to think critically, question assumptions.
Consider multiple perspectives.
Right. Because sometimes the most obvious explanation isn't the whole story.
Exactly.
There might be hidden agendas.
Power struggles.
Ideological clashes.
Things that we're not fully aware of.
And think about the timing of all of this.
Right.
I mean, we're in this period of heightened political polarization, economic uncertainty.
Global tension.
It creates this environment where distrust flourishes.
And conspiracy theories run rampant.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful and not jump to conclusions.
But it's also important to consider the context in which these events are unfolding.
Like, who benefits from this narrative of a revolutionary Doge team?
Right. Who loses?
Are there unintended consequences that we haven't even thought about yet?
Because even if the Doge team's intentions are good,
right, and their methods sound,
their efforts could have, unforeseen ripple effects.
It reminds me of that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
So listener, as you continue to follow this story, keep these questions in mind.
For sure.
What are the underlying motivations of the key players?
What are the risks?
What are the rewards of the Doge team's proposed changes?
And how will all of this affect you?
Right. How will this impact your life?
Your community, your future?
At the end of the day, this isn't just about abstract economic theories or political maneuvering.
It's about real people's lives.
Exactly. And the decisions made in Washington,
this Doge team,
they're going to have very real consequences.
So stay informed.
Stay engaged.
And most importantly,
stay curious.
This deep dive might be over, but the conversation is just beginning.